Great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on challenging Trump's WeChat ban. I'm Emily Baum, and this webinar is sponsored by the Long U.S.-China Institute at UC Irvine. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and condemn the recent hate crimes that have been perpetrated against Asian Americans. The executive order banning WeChat was just one in a series of actions that have served to escalate racist rhetoric and racist violence against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. We at the Long Institute stand alongside our AAPI colleagues, students, and neighbors, and we think it is more important than ever to highlight the voices and perspectives like the ones we'll be hearing about today. So in August of 2020, former President Donald Trump issued an executive order banning transactions with the Chinese tech firm Tencent, which is the owner of the popular messaging app WeChat. Now, as many of you know, WeChat is a messaging app that is widely used in China. And many people in the United States, myself included, use it to stay in touch with Chinese colleagues, friends, and family members. Well, when the executive order was announced, a group of grassroots activists decided to band together to form a nonprofit group called the WeChat Users Alliance, or USWUA for short. And this group went on to successfully challenge the executive order in court. Well, today we are lucky to be joined by leading members of the WeChat Users Alliance and the litigation team. We are going to have a moderated conversation, which will take about 40 to 45 minutes or so. And with the remaining time, we will open it up to audience Q&A. If you would like to ask a question at any point during this webinar, please do so using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will collect your questions and ask them on your behalf at the end of the webinar. And just before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to my colleague, Ji Li at UCI's School of Law, who helped to spearhead and organize this event. So let me briefly introduce our speakers. And in the interest of time, I'll only be able to give a short introduction for all of them. But if you're interested in learning more about our speakers or learning more about the WeChat Users Alliance, you can follow the link that we will drop in the chat. So Ying is the founder of Ying Law PLLC in New York, and she is the Secretary General of the Corporate Business Committee of the New York chapter of the American Immigration Bar Association, and she is on the Board of Trustees of the USWUA. Clay Zhu is Chief Partner and Attorney at DeHeng Law Firm's Silicon Valley office, and he has been practicing law in the United States since 2000. He is also on the WeChat ban litigation team. Angus Ni is the founder of AFN Law PLLC, and he is the chairman of the New York City Bar Association's Asian Affairs Committee. He, as well, is on the WeChat ban litigation team. Yuan is a practicing attorney in New Jersey, New York, and California, and he has been a partner and senior attorney in one of the world's top-ranked large British and American law firms. Gang is on the Board of Trustees of the USWUA. John Wu is a practicing attorney in New York, and he is a member of the New York State Bar Association, the New York State Litigation Bar Association, the New York County Bar Association, and the New York Asian Bar Association, and he is on the Board of Trustees of the USWUA. So welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to speak with me today. Maybe to just get started, we can begin with some general background context. Now, I'm sure most people in the audience have heard at least a little bit about Trump's executive order, but maybe they don't know all of the details about it. So perhaps we can just get started by having you provide a little bit of brief background information about the proposed WeChat ban. Specifically, why did Trump target WeChat, and what was he trying to achieve through this executive order? And I'll let you guys just decide to answer that question in whichever way you want.
I'm going to start. I think Trump has been very active in terms of promoting his tough stance on China for quite a while, especially in 2020, of course, for election purposes. He was, one of his rally in Tulsa was sabotaged by a lot of TikTok users. We didn't expect at all there was a presidential action would be taken against WeChat. So it came out as a complete surprise on August 6th. During the course of litigation, of course, we found out more about how and why the government took such action, but it was very obvious to me, at least, it's racially biased. And it was trying to create an image that Trump was tough on China.
Does anyone else want to add to that?
I think it's somewhat, I mean, it was somewhat obvious, right? It was transparent what he was trying to do. And I think because it's basically because of the transparency in his goals that really motivated a bunch of people like us. We're just normal people. You know, all of us are just lawyers practicing in our own practice areas. I'm a commercial litigator, you know, and I'm apolitical. I don't organize. I don't do any of this type of thing normally. And it was just like you're just going about your day, and this news comes out of like, we're going to ban WeChat. It's like, what? So it's almost like I almost feel like it's more useful to say like the guy's motives were absolutely transparent, and the fact that someone could abuse the dignity of the office of the president to kind of rile up racism and try to use that to garner votes is a travesty. And that's why all of us got together and said, no way.
Yeah, so, I mean, Angus, this is kind of an extension of what you were just talking about, but, you know, very soon after Trump announced the WeChat ban, the five of you banded together to create the US WeChat Users Alliance. This alliance went on to challenge the ban in court, but what exactly motivated you to decide to take this on to challenge the president's executive order? And why do you think that you were the only lawyers to file a lawsuit?
For me personally, I think WeChat is the most important app on my phone. I spend 4 or 5 hours a day on WeChat. Especially during the time of the pandemic, you know, as I mentioned, before the pandemic, I went back to China every other month or so. And one of the reasons is for business. The other is I still have family members, including my mom back in China. And WeChat during the pandemic was the only way I could communicate with my mom, you know, using the video call function. We could see each other. It's like, you know, person-to-person communication. My practice serves mostly Chinese clients. I think the vast majority. So if I don't have WeChat, you know, I will lose like 80% of my business. So this is very personal to me.
Right. So for me, it's the same. Overwhelming majority of my clients are Chinese, either Chinese Americans in the United States or just the Chinese people in mainland or other parts of the world. And I'm an immigration lawyer. I've created dozens of WeChat groups in which I provide free answers, suggestions to their questions. And we have a WeChat account. We publish articles informing my potential clients the latest legal updates. So without a WeChat, it would be, you know, it would be unimaginable how I'm going to conduct my business.
Can I mention the fact that the five of us first get to know each other was because we belong to the same WeChat group?
It's interesting because I tend to think of WeChat as just a more like a personal communication device, but it really seems like it is so intrinsic to your business operations as well that you wouldn't have been able to maintain your businesses without it. But why do you think that you were the only lawyers to challenge the executive order?
I think we didn't really look around the landscape who would be most qualified to do this legal campaign. It was under so much time pressure. The executive order was supposed to take effect within 45 days. In the federal court, if you need to identify and find all the plaintiffs, draft and file the complaints, and then file the motion for preliminary injunction and get an order within 45 days. That's extraordinary speed. So we didn't have time actually to look around who would be able to come out and stand out. 5 of us just thought, we need to do something right now. So I think that's the main goal here.
Yeah, we just fast. We just fast. So and we filed a case like a right on time, and I think other people just back up, and that WeChat group, we were all in there. It's kind of included like a 200 lawyers around the country. Then most people like in major firms already know we're doing this, and they obviously don't want to touch it, and it's kind of like a sensitive area. Yeah.
And also,
I would add just like a few sentences. I think 5 lawyers, not too many, not too little. We just like have a very good balance about like 2 people can do the litigation, another 3 can like do the other stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like 5 or 6 people like within. I think the day it was announced, like the discussion started in the WeChat group of like, how do we organize a lawsuit? So it's like 5 lawyers in such a short time, organizing and being able to do this is almost a testament to it's like how many lawyers like would have been willing to do it. And actually we got calls from various groups of people who and other lawyers too, after, as we were drafting up the lawsuit, saying, hey, we were planning to do it as well. And I think so we were just, first to file and best organized. It doesn't mean that other people were not going to do it if we didn't.
I see. So maybe we can talk a little bit about your process in filing this lawsuit. So why did you choose to file in Northern California specifically, and why did you choose the particular judge and court that you proceeded with?
I think within the 24 hours of the executive order came out, I drafted a memo that kind of analyzing the legal problems with the executive order and proposed a legal campaign, basically laying out all the constitutional problems the executive order had. One of the strategies is trying to find a liberal court. So I think Northern California is one of our choices. It's more a matter of finding the right plaintiffs. I actually spent almost, I think, 2 weeks to identify and locate all the plaintiffs, because to able to use all the legal theories and claims we possibly could get, we need to find, for example, a WeChat user that uses WeChat for political discussions, for election purposes, to drive out voters. So we could use the political speech claim. And then we're trying to use a federal statute that protects religious freedom. If we can find a WeChat user uses, for example, the platform to conduct Bible study, to attend church activities, and that will help us use that statute. So it is a matter of where we can find the plaintiffs, and one of the things we identified is we try to use as many legal claims we could and to maximize our chance of winning the case. I think the Northern California courts are famously known for its liberal stance, especially in the Trump years. And by the way, we didn't pick our judges. The judges were randomly assigned by the court.
Maybe just to continue what Clay was talking about with the plaintiffs, were people maybe reluctant to testify? And if so, how did you encourage them to participate?
That was one of the toughest things to do at the beginning. A lot of Chinese Americans were afraid actually to become the face of the lawsuit, especially for people who are coming from China, filing a lawsuit against the president of the United States. There is some concern for a lot of people. A lot of friends actually told me, I could support your cause by donating money to the lawsuit, but I'm not going to be your plaintiff here. So I spent a lot of time trying to persuade and convince those people, saying, we're not filing a lawsuit on behalf of Tencent or on behalf of the Chinese government. We're trying to protect our own constitutional rights in this country here. It is very common to sue the government, especially when we have such a strong legal claims on our side. I believe I talked to probably 24 people in my circle. Unfortunately, I was able to convince, I believe, 5 individuals. There's one religious plaintiff, one representing a business owner who uses WeChat to conduct her business. And there were 2 plaintiffs who were using WeChat to run a nonprofit organizations on WeChat. So we had quite a variety of plaintiffs that represent different purposes and functions that WeChat users were trying to take advantage.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. Like, what that you're almost getting at. It's like in the aftermath of the lawsuit, I've had a lot of discussions with I guess mainland Chinese folks that heard about it or talked to me about it, and it's like a lot of people who come to America from China, they come here for whatever America represents, right? But they bring in with them some baggage about what the government is and what governments by nature will do to you if you oppose the government. And that's just kind of ingrained. And so it's almost ironic in that, like, Trump did this as this whole, like, oh, we're here, like the pretense was that, oh, we're defending American democracy. But the very fact of the lawsuit really taught a lot of Chinese people who were watching on the sidelines, oh my God, like, this is a country where you can, as an average citizen, can stand up and say, no, we're suing the government. And an organ of the government will say, you're right, we're going to stop what the executive is doing, the most powerful man in the country is doing to a minority via the law. And so a lot of these people were very skeptical. There was a lot of fundraising efforts. And I think Ying and Clay and everyone else here, I wasn't so involved on the fundraising aspects, but I think that the folks that really organized the charity know this better than I do. Like, it was pulling teeth to raise funds in the beginning, but when the preliminary injunction order came out, that's when people were like, oh my God, this is for real. Like, America is not, the legal system is not just kidding. It's not like they're for show. And it really woke a lot of people up as to, they moved to America for, what? Rights, the ability to invoke the legal system.
Just on maybe a practical level, I'm curious about who these plaintiffs were. I mean, were they just in your network? Were they relatives? Did they have any kind of personal connection to you? How do you actually go about finding people who are willing to testify for such a huge case as this one? One that is so symbolic, as Angus was saying, of what it means to participate in a democracy and what it means to have free speech. How do you go about recruiting these types of people?
I think it's a pretty, randomly. We just try our best to reach out, any possible person, and they are kind of just volunteer, like a couple of volunteers of them, and we select them, and they're pretty we know them before, and so they are willing to do this just as a volunteer. Mm-hmm.
One of the major ways to reach potential plaintiffs is actually through WeChat. Interestingly, I believe I made several posts in my moments to reach out a lot of people. Those requests and for plaintiffs have been shared and reposted within the WeChat groups. I received a lot of inquiries that were interesting, at least some of them are reaching out to me either through the WeChat friends circle, or people already know my name or know some of the lawyers' name that would be able to reach out to us with a level of at least some kind of trust and confidence in our reputation and our credibility.
The WeChat itself was really central in the success of this case, somewhat ironically.
It is. I think our entire fundraising campaign is pretty much done on WeChat. So
you've already alluded a little bit to some of the challenges you had in recruiting these plaintiffs, but I'm sure you faced a lot of other challenges as the case proceeded. So what would you say were some of the main hurdles or obstacles that you had to overcome, and how did you go about overcoming them?
I think, Ying, you should talk about fundraising.
So the five of us kind of were divided into two groups. One group include Angus and Clay. They are on the litigation team. And John, Gang, and I are in charge of the entity, USWUA, which is primarily engaged in fundraising, being the lead plaintiff, and also applying for 501c3 tax-exempt status. So in terms of fundraising, we started fundraising on around August the 10th, and we stopped accepting donations around September the 22nd. So it's about 6 weeks. Within 6 weeks, we have raised a total of $1.07 million US. But majority of this funding was raised. It's like maybe $500,000 or $600,000 came in right after Judge Biller issued the preliminary injunction. That is very dramatic. People really saw the difference that a judge can make to their lives. During the first maybe 3 to 4 weeks, the money we raised was not sufficient to pay the first month legal fee. So Clay and Angus were prepared just to proceed with the case by themselves if we couldn't raise more money. But we reached out to different sources. We issued many WeChat articles giving updates of the case. So the WeChat articles really played a central role because it was during pandemic. We couldn't have fundraising parties or dinners as what people normally conduct fundraisings. We have to rely on online marketing. So basically, maybe John and Gang can add about what we did in fundraising.
Oh yes, in first couple of days, I think we just get the $25,000 $25,000, and that's only can pay the retainer fee. So at that point we have a meeting, like I think it's a long meeting, first long meeting, that we said which lawyer we're gonna pick, when it's expensive with reputation experience, when it's with experience but not really that much, and we finally decided to use the more expensive one, and we think the lawsuit itself will drops their fund come in, and it's based on my experience, because when there was a situation, Peter Liang case, the Chinese cop killed a African American in New York City years ago, and the Chinese American community just raised the fund for defense this cop because he's a Rocky and shoot the bullet actually on the wall, and the bullet just bounced back, and kill a guy like randomly at the 2 stories down. It's totally a tragedy for 2 people. And they're at the first at the beginning, there's also not too many people donate to Peter Liang's case, but at their turning point, the judge found the jury found Peter Liang guilty on a very high manslaughter, and which is totally beyond the standard of I believe it's not to meet the facts. It's not really meet the standards of this of that situation. Then the community just arranged the fundraising, and it appears the community is all very rage about that. Since in New York City, there were no cop was criminal charged before, and the first charged cop was an Asian American, Rocky, and he apparently didn't really know about the situation, and he apparently didn't really kill this guy intention, and it's the bullet just bounced back, and Mr. Aikaguri somehow walked into the building. It's really compared to this Staten Island situation, which was happened that in the same year, the guy was chokehold in front of the screen and by the police, and there's no criminal charge, and we think that's pretty much target on the easy person, and we think it's a scapegoat. And even the Black community at that time saying, we don't buy the government to sue a Asian guy, that most of Black people are killed by the white guy. That's what they say. So I have a sense that people gonna the law, if the lawsuit successfully filed and we get the successful result in certain stage, then the money won't be a problem, because at that time when we raised fund for Peter Liang, we raised probably 560,000 just majorly in New York, and locally just by people come to some site and those give $10, $20. So I have a sense that this executive order impacted Chinese community way more bigger than that situation. So at their second meeting, I said, I'm not worried about the 500,000, 600,000, and I believe Agnes and Ying just said, you are rich. No, but the first couple of weeks, it's very it's still very tough, because most of the fund is come from our lawyer friends or just regular friends, and after lawsuit filed, and some people see, they're doing something, and then the money coming later. But we really appreciate the people who donated to us at the very first beginning, because there are a lot of people that just don't know who we are, and that's really moved me a lot. It's like what's say in Bible by the Jesus, that people never see me and believe me. It's a really believing,
So Ying had said that you cumulatively had raised over $1 million. Do you get a sense of most of these donations were kind of the small denominations, like John had been talking about, $10, $20, or did you get some larger donations? I mean, do you have a sense of how many people in total donated to this cause?
Yes, we did a calculation. It's all from individuals. The donations are all from individuals. So a total of 18,000 individuals donated to us. Majority of them just range between, $100 to $200. Yeah, very few large amount donations.
One thing I want to add here is when we first made a conscious decision to hire the best lawyers to lead this case, and his name is Michael Bin. He's a very accomplished lawyer in San Francisco. He happens to be a friend, and I talked to him about taking on this case, and his hourly rate is over $1,000 an hour. And when we initially retained him, I basically told him, I cannot guarantee we can pay your legal bills, but we really need your help. So fortunately, he agreed to take on the case, but he took on a huge risk.
Wow, that's really impressive. I mean, all of the work that you did just to fundraise and galvanize all of this energy and attention toward the cause. I just wanted to say for our audience, if you have a question at any point, please feel free to ask it using the Q&A function, and we'll get to that shortly, and probably in the next 15 minutes or so. So I wanted to kind of turn our attention to maybe placing this in a more global context. The proposed WeChat ban was taking place against this backdrop of an increasingly hostile relationship between the United States and China. Do you guys think that these escalating tensions between the United States and China kind of played a role in how the case proceeded? And if so, how did you handle it? How did you kind of navigate these tensions?
Well, it is definitely part of the entire complaint in terms of how Trump started 4 years ago with the trade war. And then he proceeded with taking actions against all the major technology companies from China, Huawei, ZTE, all those companies. And Tencent, is one of the largest high technology companies from China, and it's making headways in the United States in terms of its gaming revenue and reach out in the United States as well in Europe. So I think it is part of the entire geopolitics between US and China, where the Trump administration was trying to at least restrain and put some restrictions on how the Chinese technology industry could grow outside of China. I think from the very beginning, we also made it very clear that our lawsuit, our legal campaign, only represented the average WeChat users in the US. We have no relations with the Chinese government or Tencent. We actually made a decision not to accept any donations outside of the US. And during the course of litigation, actually, I personally received some calls from China asking us whether or not our legal law campaign needed help. I said, no, this is, we do not want to politicize the case. We try to make this as a case under the US Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sensitive to those political landscape until afterwards. I heard I listened to a lecture from the Professor Susan Shirk, and she said, "Oh, we really care about the TikTok, but we don't care about WeChat." And so, I sense it is something related to the political issues, but I'm really sensitive to the First Amendment, and I was a student with Professor William Warner Van Astael, constitutional scholar. He passed away in California as well. So the first impression of this executive order, I'm thinking like, what? This is kind of not really I learned from my textbook. So I just quickly email his widow, the wife, Professor Lankov, who's a professor in California, a law school in California as well. So I said, I generally explained the situation to her. She said, yeah, this is really too much. Yeah, so I quite get a sense, we were successfully challenged this.
Clay, you had said that you specifically decided not to accept any kind of donations or legal help from outside of the United States. Were people from outside of the United States actively trying to donate to the cause?
I don't know personally. I think Ying would have more information on that, but we did adopt a restriction on how donations should be made, only within the United States.
Yeah, in our disclaimer, we specifically state that if you are outside the US, but you are US citizen or green card holder, you can donate to us. If you are within the United States, as long as you are on any legitimate visa, you have a legal status in the US, we can accept your donations.
And that's also, we decided not to accept any donations or payments through WeChat, because that money would come from China. Or donation channels through PayPal or bank deposits and so forth.
Very interesting. So traditionally, the courts have been very deferential to the president's power in national security, but your lawsuit was able to win this preliminary injunction blocking the immediate ban on WeChat. So how do you think this case overcame these challenges posed by the executive order?
Evidence. I think one of the most critical day in the course of litigation was, I believe, in the first week of September after the lawsuit was filed, and the DOJ finally produced about 1,200 pages to us as a substantiating evidence for the WeChat ban. We, as litigation counsel for the case, we received the package, I think around 10:30 p.m. on one of the Wednesday night. And I was very anxious because from the very beginning, my biggest fear was that if the United States government really had evidence to show that somehow some Chinese spies or Tencent were using WeChat to conduct espionage or other illicit activities in the US, then we have no case, Then I would agree, for the sake of the United States, for national security, I would agree with WeChat ban. So I was very eager to see that real evidence. I did not go to sleep. I spent like 3-4 hours that night, looked through the pages, and I was smiling when going to sleep because I didn't find anything at all in that 1,200 page material. I thought that was the time I really felt confident that we could beat this so-called national security pretext or grounds from the president.
Yeah, I think that, they just, it was just very obviously pretextual. I mean, the more they came up with, the more they were, you could tell from their briefing that they were sort of dancing in circles, and they really relied a lot. I mean, this is all public, by the way, because the case is not over, so I'm not, going to say anything about internal stuff that's not public. But if you just examine their briefings, they really relied very heavily on this deference thing. Just like, it's the executive, they've made a determination that there's a national security threat and therefore deference. And it's just very super circular, and the court just didn't buy it. The court was just like, there's got to be some iota of a showing of some kind. But the evidence you've submitted simply isn't up to snuff. I think there's a document, we argued a point where, one of the only documents that the US government itself, some executive agency that conducted any substantive analysis on this issue, actually recommended not to ban WeChat. that was one of the documents they produced. It was like, and the rest of it was literally newspaper articles and complete speculation. And if you chase down even newspaper articles that, I mean, so after that document production was made, we tasked like a half a dozen associates to go read every page and check every site. And it was just like, like you got to check their sites, right? I mean, they brief something and it's like see exhibit or appendix page, whatever. Okay, look at that page, it's a newspaper article. It's like, okay, well, the US government is now relying on newspaper articles to ban a communication platform used by tens of millions of people. Okay, well, let's look at the citation in the newspaper article that's purportedly to some kind of think tank. And the think tank turns out to be this to be some other place that's in Australia that's citing to another newspaper article. And if you chase down the sites, it just becomes this circular, dog chasing the tail thing. And it's like, so nobody's really done any substantive analysis. And what they could, relative with some defensibility, argue was indeed, WeChat is in China and WeChat obeys Chinese laws and WeChat does supply information to the Chinese government. And it's like, well, everybody knew that. How does that pose a national security threat to the United States? And how does banning 20 million Americans and residents, legal residents or whatnot, who are in America from using this, how does that contribute to bolstering US national security? They just couldn't make the logical connection from premise to conclusion. And that was always their problem. And I kind of the obstacle here from the beginning was, indeed, there's a lot of deference. But deference is, you learn from this litigation, is not unlimited. It needs to be buttressed with something.
One of the really damaging piece of evidence for the government is that we discovered that Tencent actually privately approached the DOJ and Commerce Department and offered a very generous and comprehensive mitigation proposal. Those proposals included setting up a US version of the WeChat, setting up data servers within the United States, and also having a third party auditing how the data was shared and accessed. Those were standard industry best practices in terms of data privacy. But the US government just flatly rejected the whole thing, saying, we do not trust Chinese companies. So that's why we need to completely ban WeChat. So it does not make any sense. And this really helped our case.
Yeah, actually, in the very beginning, we have no idea, how serious of the national security issue will be, because we don't know what WeChat doing. We just use these apps to chat with relatives. How that becomes the regular people just think how that becomes a national security issue, and is the president interested in what I'm gonna do the dinner for my mom or something. And then when the evidence came out, it's just as they said, it's just a nothing. And I remember the very several points that the judge made during hearing. First of all, she said, it's everything about China. You didn't provide anything what the Tencent or what the WeChat do here, is doing here. And the second thing is, since this meet the First Amendment issue, so the policy you issued, the government issue has to be narrowly tailored. And the judge questioned them. So you said you narrowly tailored, and still came out with the blanket ban on this. It's she thinks it's a joke. She said it's and she said we are fully understand the technology issues here in Northern California, and you probably don't because the DOJ provide their counsels from the East Coast, and but just tell them to rethink about this.
Yeah, actually, that kind of reminds me of an earlier question I had asked about why you chose to file in Northern California. Not only is it maybe a more liberal leaning court, but also they do have knowledge of these tech companies like Tencent. So maybe my last question before we open it up for Q&A, because we're starting to get some questions in here. Could you just update us on the current status of the lawsuit?
The case is on hold. Since the new administration came into power, they asked the court and us to suspend all legal actions on the WeChat lawsuits. They need 60 days to review the action. My personal hope is, actually the 60 days are coming up very soon. My personal hope is the president would withdraw the WeChat banning executive order issued by the former president. That will completely close this case.
Great, so let's turn to some of the questions that we've gotten. The first question is from Christine Kim, who asks, how are WeChat users in mainland China responding to how the case unfolded? We've mainly been focusing on WeChat users in the US, but have you been kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of people in China or outside of the US?
I think there's a huge outpouring of interest from China because, I mean, China has 1.4 billion people. I think the vast majority of those people are on WeChat. So the news spread very fast. And actually took, just as Angus previously mentioned, I took a personal interest in talking to a lot of reporters from China. Not only because this is newsworthy, I actually want to spread how the American legal system works, how average people like us could sue the president and hold the president responsible for his actions. I mean, even the president needs to abide with the Constitution.
I think the reactions from WeChat users in mainland China are kind of mixed. Some of the users, they kind of agree with former President Trump. They said, this week Tencent, just shut down our WeChat. Why didn't you sue Chinese government? Why didn't you file a complaint in the court in China? And we got some threat, harassment from Chinese people. They said that we are representatives of Tencent and the Chinese government. We have some special purpose. But of course, majority of the WeChat users support us.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is actually very interesting from lots of China mainland WeChat users. Many people starting to interested in US constitutional law, basically. They were interested in US law, how to operate, to deal with this case.
I think it's kind of that. I think the most of people still don't understand, what we are doing, what we are trying to do here, and they say, "Oh yes, you're the light of the Chinese people. You are, you help China to gain some reputation." Whatever, blah blah blah. And we said, no, we are just helping the local people who are using this for the daily basis. It's nothing related to US or China, or we do something for China. It's not really related, but they think they think it's proud to for the whole China or whole Chinese people. But it's really not. It's just a simple, it's just related to the simple lives we are living here.
It is interesting at the beginning of the case, there really did seem to be a lot of divisions where some people actively supported the WeChat ban and then others were very much pushing back against it. I mean, how did you react to these accusations that you were serving as maybe like a tool of the Chinese government? How did you kind of push back against those accusations?
I think we were trying to distance ourselves as far as possible from Tencent or the Chinese government. So from what we did in terms of fundraising or litigation strategy or selecting the proper plaintiffs, we made it very clear from the very beginning that we had no relations with this politics. Some outside audience, especially Trump supporters, will oppose what we were doing, but that's okay. They have their own legal rights to file whatever lawsuit they can, court of law, against Tencent for their whatever illegal activities they think Tencent has done. But we're just trying to access our own constitutional rights.
So another question we've received, this is from my UCI colleague, Ji Li, and he asks, he says that you said that during the litigation, more was learned about why Trump issued the executive order. Could you say more about that? What went into their calculation? Did they anticipate a lawsuit from WeChat users? So can you elaborate a little bit about what you learned in the process of this lawsuit?
As far as I know, based on the evidence and documents produced by the Department of Justice and Department of Commerce, I believe this is part of the so-called anti-China strategy that Trump has been adopting since he came into power. There is a huge geopolitical factors in it. I don't think this entire executive order was written in a way that could withstand legal challenges, but they still went ahead anyway. They thought, especially under the name of national security, they could get away with it. Actually, a lot of executive order had some luck with the court system. For example, the Muslim travel ban was actually partially upheld by the Supreme Court. So I think there is at least some people within the administration thought they could get away with it, not from our side. So.
I think personally, I don't think Trump really, intentionally, issue specific stuff on WeChat. He probably don't even know now what WeChat is, and it just he wants just everything works out. What his strategy is, if you want to be tough in China, you just throw out all those strategy and make him to be a tough man and let the court do the best. He said, then he can blame the court. He said, "Oh, no, court banned it. It's not my fault."
Another question, did the case change your view about the US political and legal system?
Well, for me, it reaffirmed my belief in rule of law in this country. I think I'm a corporate lawyer, I'm a commercial lawyer. I'm involved in a lot of litigation, but only involved in business disputes. I was never a constitutional lawyer. This is my first constitutional lawsuit I was ever involved in. And sometimes we took it for granted. I think John Lewis said, democracy is not a state, it's an act. So someone somehow needs to stand up to actually defend those rights. And unfortunately, this case come to, at least to right now, I think we've seen favorable results, and it really strengthened my belief in the rule of law of this country.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm also a commercial litigator, and I'm always like, why hasn't the judge made a ruling on this thing yet? And now I realize how they have more important things to do.
Oh yeah, it's just it definitely strengthens my belief in the whole legal system. And there is a very interesting comment from my high school classmate, but no offense if someone doesn't feel comfortable. He said because India also banned WeChat and TikTok as well, and we successfully challenged this, and they said okay. American is still American. India is India.
Yeah, I think it's more confidence on the US legal system, but with the political system, I'm a little bit disappointed about like how can a US president can abuse his power so much?
Yeah, just think about it. What if any Chinese regular citizens bring a lawsuit suing the president of China in China and see what happens there? So.
But interestingly brought out both the worst and the best of the US legal system. So maybe one final question. This is also from G. How did you get Erwin Chemerinsky to be an expert witness in the case? And for those in the audience who might not be familiar, Erwin was the former dean of the UCI School of Law. I believe he's now at Berkeley. So how did you get Erwin to be an expert witness?
Once we started the lawsuit, several big law firms started approaching us, offering help, pro bono help. One of them is Davis Wright Tremaine. It's a big law firm, especially on the West Coast. They probably have the best First Amendment practice lawyers down there. I happen to know one of the lead counsel down there. His name is Thomas Burke. He's a good friend with Chemerinsky. So I reached out to Tom and said, we would love to have you as a pro bono co-counsel on the case. And then let's see how we can strengthen the case. And we actually did an inventory of what people we want to bring as expert witnesses. And besides Dean Chemerinsky, we had several technology experts who helped us to solve the data privacy issues and provided written testimony to the court. We also had a professor from UCSF who studies the Asian Chinese American equal treatment issues and Chinese American histories. And he provided a very, very moving testimony in terms of how the Chinese Americans has suffered racial discrimination and bias in this country, provided a very helpful context for the judge to make a decision. Even though racial bias and equal treatment is not a reason for the judge to issue the preliminary injunction, but it provides a lot of additional ammunition for us to present to the court.
So one last point before we wrap up. I know that you recently formed a new organization, the Chinese American Legal Defense Alliance. Could you just speak briefly about this new organization and what you're hoping to accomplish with it?
Okay, well, actually the five of us have been thinking and planning what we should do after the WeChat case is wrapped up. And then we have been planning for months, but the trigger for the formation of this Chinese American Legal Defense Alliance was the mass shooting of 6 Asian women in Georgia. So we formed Chinese American Legal Defense Alliance it's the first and only nonprofit organization that is dedicated to providing free or heavily subsidized legal representation to Chinese Americans who are the victims of racial discrimination and the racially motivated hate crimes that are rampant these days. Our mission is to seek justice and racial equality through litigation and other legal actions, as what we have done in the WeChat case. We will retain the best lawyers to defend Chinese American victims of hate crimes and racial discrimination in a court of law against all wrongdoers, be it an individual, a company, or the government. Our immediate objective will be twofold. One is to provide legal assistance to the victims in Atlanta, and we have already connected with one of the families. The other is to help the Chinese American professors who are wrongfully prosecuted by the DOJ under the China Initiative. We have identified 2 priority cases that require immediate intervention because of the upcoming trial schedule and the lack of specialized legal skills in defending such cases. the bottom line is that nobody should be treated as a spy because of the color of his or her skin.
That's wonderful. A really necessary initiative. We dropped the link for the organization in the chat if anyone wants to take a look at it. So I think since we don't have any further questions from the audience, that we will wrap up. But once again, I really want to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to the WeChat Users Alliance, Ying, Clay, Angus, Gang, and John for taking time out of their busy schedules to speak with us today and to shed more light on this very important case. Thank all of you for watching and for participating. Take care, and I hope to see you at another Long Institute event in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.